All right, NCFA fans, we are back with another NCFA weekly podcast. As usual, I am your host, Nick Bongers, the media coordinator for the NCFA, and joining me as usual today is the director of football operations, Dave Mogensen. How are you doing this week, Dave?
Doing good, Nick. Happy to get on here again and talk some NCFA football.
Interesting week. Let's get into it. So as usual, I'm going to fix this really quick. As usual, this is what you have in store for this week's podcast. We're going to recap week 6. We're going to highlight some players of the week, go over the brand new power rankings. So usually this podcast has been a week behind, but you're going to get it fresh off the press this week. We're going to look at some weekly scores around the NCFA from last week, some video highlights. Thanks again to the teams that contribute to that. And we're going to take a look at the week 7 preview coming up. So who do we got this week, Dave, for players of the week?
So this week, I know we don't have a graphic yet. We just got selected, but we have a returning player of the week, Kellen Gerenstein from Ohio State as our offensive player of the week once again. 6 touchdowns and yet another giant victory for Ohio State that we'll talk more about when we get to that portion. And then new team player of the week for Wright State and their victory is Jacoby Wilson, defensive lineman who had a whole boatload of sacks, interceptions, all kinds of stuff from his defensive end position. So it's nice to see a new team get some recognition there with the Wright State Raiders.
Yeah, with a crucial win for Wright State, I think that's a very well-deserved player of the week there with that player being crucial to that victory. All right, moving on to the new power rankings. This is a snippet of the Wilson Week 6 power rankings. No surprise, we've got Ohio State still at the top, but there are some changes going on in the top 10, Dave.
Yeah, we got some movement. So we had last week, we had Toledo shooting up and they were in the 4th seed. So we had the big Michigan State Toledo game. Michigan State wins that one and they shoot up. We still have Ohio State, Gordon, and Sacred Heart kind of, solidifying their top 3. A news flash that came out today is Ohio State and Sacred Heart both have clinched hosting their respective conference championship games. So they're going to, whoever goes to play them is going to have to go into their place for the conference championship. But, Coffin's still up there. Toledo only dropped a little bit with their loss. And, Central Georgia Tech's got a couple of wins under their belt now, so they're creeping into that top 10.
Yeah, Michigan also looking like they're coming close to clinching that rematch against Ohio State too. Not only has Ohio State clinched the home game, to play for that conference championship, but it's looking like Michigan State might be the contender for that rematch.
Math wise, I think Michigan State needs to win this weekend and they will clinch the other spot. Great Lakes will probably be the first to clinch, and then the Coppin State George Mason game will clinch the other one. Right now, South Atlantic is still pretty wide open. I think Gordon State needs 1 win to clinch their spot in hosting of it. So we're getting close to identifying who the conference champions are going to be, at least who's playing in the game.
Yeah, interesting week. An interesting week coming up. So we're going to look at last week. Last week's preview. We've got scores updated here. Williamson Tech, Dave, we dropped the ball on this one.
George, I had a bad week overall. Let's just put that out. This is my worst week of picks in the season. I gave you a little leg room here. You're narrowing in on me, but yeah, George Mason came out with a great win. To me, that's a very impressive win. Thus far, their most impressive win of the season. So, George Mason going against William Tech. I know we have some highlights of that, I think, but pretty impressive win for Mason.
Sorry, my dog was barking.
Sorry.
It looks like Sacred Heart pitches a shutout against Clarkson. This is a big win for Sacred Heart. Like you said, clinching. I think both of us had Sacred Heart picked.
Yeah, Clarkson had a good start to the season. I did expect this game to maybe be a little bit closer than it was. We both thought Sacred Heart was going to win, but I didn't think we expected it to be this kind of score. So For Clarkson, it shows them, where they still have to try to get to. They've had a better season than years past thus far. Hopefully they can finish strong now that, playing in the conference championship game is not going to be an option. So finish their regular season strong, but, Sacred Heart's just, I think, getting better as time progresses.
Yeah, and number 12, Central Georgia Tech beats South Carolina. South Carolina put some points on the board, but still couldn't put up with the points that Central Georgia Tech put up on them.
Yeah, I think they had a punt block touchdown and a defensive touchdown. So it looks like South Carolina's defense may not have played as bad as the score would indicate, but Central Georgia Tech expansion, brand new team here, school with their first year of club football. So they're just trying to get their legs under them. They got their first couple wins. This is their first NCFA win. They had beaten a prep school previously this season, so their first NCFA win of their very short NCFA history here. But I'm interested to see what they do here against Gordon Tech coming down the stretch and see if they can give them a run for their money or not.
And congrats to Central Georgia Tech on that win. This was one that I didn't think hit the radar last week for our preview, but we had Gordon State losing 3-20 against Georgia Military College.
Yeah, it's one of those games where they had an opening and they were able to find somebody, and we didn't find out until late in the week. So Georgia Military College, if you don't know much about them, they're generally a powerhouse. So for Gordon State to only lose 20-3 is actually, to me, very impressive. I mean, that Georgia Military College has a lot of guys. It's a junior college, so it has a lot of guys that go to the NFL often that started their college careers at Georgia Military College. So 20-3 is a very respectable score against a team like that.
It seems like with exception to George Mason, this was a week of blowouts. We've got number 17 Milwaukee beating Miami, Ohio 27-6.
Yeah, again, Miami's struggling a little bit with numbers. They've had some injuries. They didn't have a ton of numbers to begin with, more than the last few years, but they're struggling just with the amount of guys that they have available after the injuries. So for Milwaukee to go through all the way across to Ohio and get that win is a really nice win for them. I think they might have one more game left. Looks like with the two losses, I don't know if they'll be able to snag that fourth open seed for the playoffs, but they can finish strong with the win in their last game.
Next game, number 4 Oakland loses 10-54 against Ohio State.
I mean, I know you and Coach Trega had a good conversation last week to end the podcast, but I mean, right now, what Ohio State's doing is just insane. I mean, and they've had great years the last few years. They've won national titles, but they are just running through everybody. Oakland's a great team, good program, been good ever since they've come into the NCFA and started their team. And man, I just can't understand. Ohio State's just rolling right now. And Kellen Garanstein, 6 touchdowns again, tying his own record for, I think, the third time, 6 touchdowns in a game. That defense is playing really, really good. They just have athletes all over the field. It's just impressive what Ohio State's doing right now. And I'm excited to see them in the conference championship and beyond.
Right. If you talk to any team that's played Ohio State, they give lots of credit to the speed of the offense and just the quality of offensive linemen. Everybody knows about the Ohio State quarterback and the receivers at this point, but having a good line in the trenches is a huge value in this league or in any league when you're playing football. And I think that the way that they can run up the score early in the game, you can make adjustments at halftime, and by that time you're playing catch up, and it's
what's happening is the teams are out of their element quickly because Ohio State just piles it on right away, and then you just throw your whole game plan out the window. You're down 2, 3, 4 scores before halftime, and you're not the team that you thought you were. Oakland's never been a team that's going to come in here and try to outscore you. They're going to try to create turnovers. They're going to play really, really tough defense and hard-nosed football. So when Ohio State jumps up on somebody, 3, 4 scores early, you can't play the game you want to play.
Right. And when you're on a good team like Ohio State, I say that like talent is gained in interest. And what I mean by that is when you're up 28-0 at halftime, or even like 40-something to 7 at halftime, you put your backups in the second half, and through the reps that your backups are getting, now they're getting better too. So at the end of the season, when you're playing these better teams, you're going to the playoffs, you've got that championship mentality. when your number one gets hurt, your number two's been playing a half of football every single game
Sure.
all season because they've been blowing
Yeah.
out teams. So now you've got a well-rounded whole team.
Yeah. Something interesting that I was going through looking at stats. I haven't looked at stats in a few weeks, trying to just see who's uploading stats and whatnot. But if you look at Ohio State's like offensive statistics, they don't have guys who are at the top of the league in any category really. And that's mostly due to the fact that their top guys are only playing half of football right now. They have 46 guys on their roster, I think, so they have a lot of guys. And I don't know if Kellen Berenstein has played a second half yet all season.
Right. We're moving on to number 7, Toledo, getting shut out against Michigan State. This one was a surprise to us, Dave.
Yeah, we both thought Toledo had been playing such great football and they were going to come out and win maybe a high scoring game. But I kind of hem and hawed. I'm like, man, I've loved Michigan State all year. I thought they've been playing good football, what we saw, and my gut told me to go with Toledo. But Michigan State came out and that was a huge win for them. Beating Oakland was a nice win. That was a close game, but then to come out and just stomp all over Toledo here, who had done the stomping the previous 2 weeks, is a big, possible program shifting win for Ohio State. They have Loyola and Miami who aren't have the greatest years. They need to win one of those two to secure their spot in the conference championship game and get a rematch against Ohio State. So, I think Michigan State probably does that this weekend going to Miami. But it really impressive win for Michigan State.
Yeah, and I don't know, Dave, if you think that these predictions that we do from week to week give any kind of fodder to the teams saying, Dave and Nick picked against us. Now we have to stomp
Yeah.
Toledo because of that. They both chose us to lose. Uh, I I know and love Coach Beach a lot, and congrats for this big win. And shoot me a message if this is motivation, because I'll keep picking against Michigan State if that has any way contributed to their success, because I
Yeah.
like the streak that they're on.
No, and it's human nature to like an underdog story, right? So Ohio State and the Great Lakes is the big juggernaut, and they have been for years. Until somebody knocks them off, they'll continue to be that. So I would suspect that Michigan State will gain a lot of followers across the league of wanting to see what they can do in a rematch against the Buckeyes.
Last game of the week, we've got 14 Wright State pitching a shutout again, scoring 9 and beating number 11 Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, and we both again picked against the Raiders, so they've been struggling a little bit. Got their second victory on the season now, but I really picked. I thought it'd be a close game, and 9-0 a close game, but I thought the travel involved and Loyola being able to host the game would allow them to find a victory. But it sounds like Ohio State, from what the statistics they sent in, Loyola had 12 turnovers, which I don't even know how it's possible to have 12 turnovers. But the national player of the week, Jacoby Wilson had 2 of those 12 himself in a fumble recovery and a interception. So he had an interception return and it returned 91 yards and somehow didn't score.
Hmm.
So I'd love to see the video on that one, but
Yeah.
it set up their lone touchdown of the game. So I think big win for Wright State, and they're in a phase where they're not in contention for conference championship, but with a really young team, young ex players as coaches and coordinators, head coach and coordinator, they can really set themselves up to finish strong and set up 2023 as being a big year for them.
There's got to be injury somewhere. I mean, whether it's a number 2 or number 3 running back getting a lot of touches, or a number 2 or number 3 quarterback getting a lot of touches, that's where you see a lot of fumbles, especially in this league. You
Sure.
got guys that aren't maybe not game ready, and they're put into the fire. And but we also last week talked a lot about Wright State's defense having to step up, and it looks like that's
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah. That's stuff that we don't know about it doing this, and we're not having conference calls with coaches to set up for this and to see if who's hurt, who's not hurt, where you at. Very
Right.
well could be right that there had some guys go down at that time of year where a lot of our teams don't have those giant rosters. So if you might have a guy go down who's playing both ways for you, and he's your kicker, or he's your long snapper, and he's your running back, and he's your linebacker, and that's very common at our level. So you get the wrong guy or two go down, it could really decimate a team.
So it looks like on the season so far, I'm 3 games down from the predictions on Dave. Dave's the top dog.
Luckily, it's not as bad as I thought. Luckily, you and I picked some of the same losses this last week, so.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go to highlights. Do I've got setups for this? Let's see. Okay. One sec.
All right, here's Mason versus Williamson Tech.
All right, I've got some play-by-play breakdown here. This first play is a sack by Gabe Wilson on 4th down. Looks like it's about 4th and 6.
Let's continue to be impressed by the quality of athlete that Mason has across the board. I mean, they have an impressive program. Facilities are great. We're obviously playing the NCFA playoffs there this year. Great facilities, a lot of guys on the sideline, in addition to the guys in the field, and the guys that are out there, just very impressive athletes on both sides of the ball for Mason.
Here's a sack fumble again by Gabe Gibson. Fumble recovery by Darian L.
Yeah, it looks like, at least the clips we see that the defensive line for Mason was very dominating against Williamson Tech. I mean, it's hard to get anything going on offense if you can't get those first 4 guys blocked, and that's what it's looking like on all these clips. Is the Mason defensive line just kind of set the tone.
Here's a touchdown pass. Cole Jasmine to Curtis Brooks. In
Nice
double
job there.
coverage.
Yeah, split and looked like a little cover 3 where the safety was peeking in the backfield, and he's able to sneak by his guy, which he had leverage on, and then sneak behind that safety who had his eyes in the backfield. So
here's going to be a tackle on the punter.
Block punt for a touchdown, or block punt to get to about the 2-yard line. So we talked about this before. There's like something like 97% chance of you winning the game if you block a punt or a kick.
There's a Nathan Williams sack and forced fumble. Another Darian L recovery.
Once again, that D line for Mason just really getting after it. So, we got the Mason Coppin game that'll decide who goes and plays Sacred Heart. But seeing a Mason Sacred Heart rematch would be high on anybody's list of games to watch.
Another forced fumble.
Yeah, not going to win a lot of games with this many turnovers for Williamson Tech.
And this last highlight is a touchdown pass. Reception by team president, Basil Hassan.
Basil.
Nice.
Yeah, nice job. So, they had Mason's, looks like their new quarterback taking over this year, is kind of settling into his own, making some nice throws there. And, just Mason has great athletes all across the board. It's not an easy team to play against when you have that many athletes at work.
Okay. All right, we're going to jump to MSU versus Toledo. I've got some setups for these plays. This first one's Jack Donovan, 25-yard scramble.
All right, Jack Donovan currently leading the NCFA in most passing categories. Not really known for a scrambler, though. So it's interesting to see him scrambling out here and do what he's got to do. He's your kind of pocket passer guy, very accurate, good arm.
Like Toledo in the camo jerseys.
Yeah, I see that.
Good block by some receivers. Yeah. Blocked 2 guys.
5 wide, and Toledo counters that with put 8 guys in coverage, so a lot of room for the quarterback to run.
Donovan pass to Ogunloy, 4th down conversion.
Those 4th down conversions are big. Not only big to keep drives alive, they're also very demoralizing to the defense.
So Luke Alvarez sack and forced fumble coming up. Wow. This next one is a Jack Donovan to
screen pass.
Ogunloy, 36 yards.
Nice looking athlete there running with that ball.
And this is setting up a Ethan Lukens touchdown run. Beats him to the corner.
Sure. That cornerback had a chance to make a tackle, kind of got out of the way. He's running so hard.
Tackle for a loss by Ahmad Kareem.
Kareem, former player of the week, conference player of the week.
Pass in the air and intercepted by Drew Roberts. Here's a 51-yard punt coming up.
Not always on the highlight films, but 51-yard punt merits consideration for that.
Check out where this is downed. They let it bounce. Coverage stops it at the 1-yard line.
Those are game-changing kind of plays that aren't always front page center on the newspaper the next day, but those are game-changing plays. Sets up this safety.
Sets up the safety. This is the safety.
Yeah, Michigan State just playing really good football right now. Another team that has some tremendous athletes. Jack Donovan's really, playing really, really well. There's a couple other quarterbacks playing great, and obviously Kellen Garrettstein and Neil Howard's playing good for Gordon State. But right now, Jack Donovan's leading everybody in completions, attempts, yards. He's having a pretty solid season, as we kind of expected him to, as preseason All-American kind of guy.
I think that's all we have for highlights, correct?
I believe so. I didn't see a lot this week.
Great.
I think a lot of the teams that usually send us highlights were playing each other, so we only had the 2 games.
All right, let's look at week 7. We've got number 8 George Mason against number 15 Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think this is a game where Mason obviously needs to win in order to solidify the Coppin Mason game as being setting themselves up for conference championship berth. But it is traveling, not a super far trip from Mason to Pittsburgh, so I like Mason to come out on top, probably pretty decisively.
Yep, I'm with you there too. I think it's still to play a team the caliber of Mason is going to be a challenge for Pittsburgh, even though I think Pittsburgh's made some strides this year. Next game, we've got number 10 Central Georgia Tech against number 2 Gordon State. Gordon State is hanging super tough, and I think they've been kind of the Cinderella story of the season, coming off of a lot of great wins. I think that they're a major contender. I've got to pick Gordon State on this one.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this game goes. I think Central Georgia Tech, albeit a brand new team, does have some nice pieces. They're still trying to get their feet wet in their foundation as far as the whole administration and traveling and all that stuff. It's not, very well from starting up the Oakland franchise. That's not easy to do. So going into a game, if they can compete with Gordon State, even, the way Gordon State's playing outside of their loss to one of the best junior colleges in the country, I think Gordon State probably wins this one pretty handily. So if Central Georgia can just kind of hang in there for a bit, contend with them, that speak a lot to what the future of their program is like.
Here's an unknown: Maryland Prep at number 17 South Carolina, Dave.
Yeah, a little bit of unknown. I don't know much of anything about Maryland Prep. It's hard to gauge some of these prep schools. They don't stick around very long, but I do know South Carolina is struggling a bit with numbers. So hard to tell. I'm going to go with the NCFA school just to be NCFA proud here, but I would be surprised to see South Carolina maybe take a loss if they're still really struggling with numbers.
I'd like to see USC I'd like to see them get their first win this week, so I'm gonna root for them too. All right, going to the Great Lakes, we've got Wright State coming off a big win, traveling to Oakland, 13 versus number 9. Where I'm going. I'm going with Oakland.
Yeah, you're going to go with Oakland if they were playing the Chicago Bears next week. I mean, you got to, but
They could play the Packers too.
Yeah, I think Wright State is not facing Oakland at the right time. They're going to probably look to regroup after that loss to Ohio State, and I think Oakland comes out and wins this game handily.
Number 1 Ohio State playing Denison's JV squad.
Interesting game here. I mean, that the way Ohio State's playing, I'm going to pick Ohio State to beat this JV team. When I was with Milwaukee, we beat a couple JV teams here and there, and we had a couple really good teams. So the way Ohio State, we never had a team like Ohio State is right now. So I like Ohio State to get the victory over a really, really good Division III JV.
Ohio State has not given us any indications that they're willing to lose to anybody. So at this point, to bet against Ohio State would be silly. Michigan State versus Miami, Ohio. Is Miami ranked? Or I must have just missed the ranking. I apologize for that.
Yeah, they're ranking somewhere. They haven't won a game yet this year. They had a couple close ones, but
Yeah.
I think Miami's really struggling with numbers. Some of their president, some of their better players have been injured, so I think they have about 19, 20 guys on the roster healthy right now. Michigan State, I believe, clinches their spot as the opponent for Ohio State after this weekend with this game.
And Loyola versus Toledo. This is probably the wild card of the week. Loyola is coming off some. Did they win last week?
Loyola lost to Wright State last week. That was the game we both thought they were going to win, and they came out with a 9-0 loss.
And Toledo lost too. But judging from the numbers of turnovers last week, I can't go with Loyola. I've got to go with Toledo.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never heard of how you could possibly have 12 turnovers, but that's what was reported. I'm going to have to go Toledo as well. Toledo's very focused on trying to get themselves into that fourth spot, the wild card berth. So I think they're trying to add games to their schedule at the end of the year and some open week. So they're very motivated. They think they still have a chance to make some noise if they can sneak into the playoffs with that at-large bid.
So a lot's going to happen this week. A lot's going to be decided. It's cool to have the power rankings, lots of movement there. And this is the week where some things are going to be decided. So it's going to be a really interesting week.
Yeah, I think after this week, we probably have Great Lakes matchup set, and we'll have some more close to finalization on what's going to happen in the North Atlantic. And then we should have at least Gordon State clinching their hosting of the South Atlantic.
So there you have it. That's our week preview. Join us again next week for another episode. And take care, folks.